Welcome to the College Investor Audio Show, where we talk about the biggest issues impacting millennial money, from student loan debt to side hustles to building wealth. We will show you how to get out of debt so that you can build real wealth for the future.
Greetings, fellow humans. You have embarked on another episode of the College Investor Audio Show. Thank you so much. I'm weird sometimes. Today, we're looking at Form 9465, the IRS installment agreement for your taxes. Because if you find yourself getting hit with a big tax bill and no way to pay for it, don't worry. The IRS actually gives you options for paying your tax bill over time. Cool. Most people will have no problem paying their taxes using an installment agreement from the IRS. Qualifying is simple, and everything can be done online. Sweet. But for some, they may need to file IRS Form 9465 to set up the installment agreement. Who should and shouldn't file Form 9465 is what we're talking about today. No form necessary. If you owe less than $50,000 on your taxes, you don't need to file Form 9465. The formal conditions from the IRS website to qualify for an installment agreement without filing Form 9465 are as follows. Long-term payment plan, installment agreement. You owe $50,000 or less in combined tax, penalties, and interest, and filed all required returns. Short-term payment plan. You owe less than $100,000 in combined tax, penalties, and interest. You can go to the IRS website to set up your installment agreement. The URL is a big long one, and we have that for you at thecollegeinvestor.com. That's a better URL to remember. All right, so just because you file your installment application doesn't mean it will be approved, actually. But if you owe less than $10,000 in taxes, you are eligible for a guaranteed installment agreement. There are 3 options for paying your tax bill. Fees are listed with each. You can pay it in full. Short-term payment plan, which is paying in 120 days or less. That's a free setup fee. That makes no sense. If it's free, it's not a fee. So, sorry. It doesn't cost anything. How about that? Plus, accrued penalties and interest until the balance is paid in full. Okay. Now, the long-term payment plan is an installment agreement and paying more than 120 days. There's a $149 setup fee. And for low income, it's a $43 setup fee. And that may be reimbursed if certain conditions are met. So keep that in mind. Plus, of course, accrued penalties and interest until the balance is paid in full, just like any other loan. Okay, if you can't pay your bill within 120 days, you'll need to set up an installment agreement using the long-term payment plan. So the long-term installment agreement is also known as the streamlined installment agreement. And on this plan, you have 72 months or 6 years to pay off your tax bill. So as you can see from the fees that we talked about, an installment agreement, it's not going to be free. In fact, it's kind of a fairly expensive arrangement. So let's talk more about the installment agreement fees. They start with a $149 setup fee. That fee can be cut to only $31 by choosing the direct debit payment option. Recommend that. Then you set it up, you don't have to worry about it. Next come the penalties and interest. The failure to pay penalty is 0.5% per month. To put that into perspective, that's an interest rate of 6%. But once you enter an agreement, it comes down to 0.25% per month or 3% annualized. From the IRS website, this is what they say. The interest rate is determined quarterly and is the federal short-term rate plus 3%. The current quarterly interest rate can be found at thecollegeinvestor.com. When you send in a payment, or rather than IRS drafts a payment, it is applied in this order. Number 1, penalties. 2, interest. 3, other fees and expenses. And then the principal. Note that the IRS has already proposed a fee increase for installment agreements. Yay. So this increase would bring the setup fee to $225. In the direct debit option, to $107. Thanks, guys. Who should file Form 9465? Well, from the IRS website, you should file Form 9465 if you owe income tax on Form 1040 or 1040 SR. You may be responsible for a trust fund recovery penalty, or you owe employment taxes. For example, as reported on Forms 941, 943, and 940, related to a sole proprietor business that is no longer in operation, or you owe an individual shared responsibility payment under the Affordable Care Act. Types of installment agreements? There are 6 of them. Let's check those out. 1 is the guaranteed one if you owe less than $10,000. 2, we just talked about it, the streamlined. You owe less than $50,000 and you can pay in 6 years. 3 is the expanded version, and that's a new one. You owe between $50,000 and $150,000, and you can pay within 7 years or 84 months. There isn't an in-depth review of your finances with this plan. Little financial information is actually disclosed. A good thing. 4 is the graduated. It starts off with lower payments for the first 6 months and then goes way up. The increase depends on what the IRS believes you can pay. Number 5, regular full disclosure. The IRS does an in-depth review of your finances and determines what you can pay. It's best to avoid this one for obvious reasons. Number 6, the partial payment. So when all of the other plans fail, this might be the only option. The IRS does an in-depth review of your finances to determine what you can pay. One benefit to this is that any tax balance remaining after the plan terms expire is forgiven. And once you recognize that your tax bill is too large to be paid in full or within 120 days, you might consider an installment plan. It's important to set up the plan as quickly as possible, though, to reduce the cost of additional penalties. The last thing you want to do is continue letting your taxes go overdue. Ugh. The IRS is not an organization that you want coming after you. And that's all we have for today. If you were thinking about 9465, I hope this was helpful to you. Or maybe you know somebody, maybe you clicked on this because you're like, oh yeah, my friend was talking about this. Hey, share this with them and help them out too. You can see an in-depth article with all the links and everywhere you need to go at thecollegeinvestor.com. Thanks again for listening, and we'll talk to you again very soon. Have an awesome day.